welcome everybody. How are you guys doing? I see we've got people slowly milling in, 500-600 people. Make sure you've hit the like button. It helps the channel to grow and more people will see this video. Of course, I have my dear friend and wonderful journalist Pepe Escobar here with us. Pepe is a Brazilian journalist. He's been doing this for, what is it now, three decades, covering... 4 decades covering foreign relations. He's one of the best, and he's of course editor-at-large at the Asia Times. He contributes to The Cradle, and he's written many wonderful books.
Not anymore. That's a long story, Richard. Oof.
Okay, I'll let you tell it then. Pepe, how are you? It's so good to have you.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks, everybody. Well, I am in NATO's town at the moment. I'm in Paris, and wow.
How are things? How are people?
Oh, man. Look, it's crazy because while I am in Paris, I follow French politics. This means that I was in the streets on Tuesday. I was at the Manif on Tuesday. I even breathed a little bit of a tear gas, which reminds me of my good old days when I was a kid, you know. So, and of course, I follow NATO, Brussels, and I have to keep following the US deep state and everywhere in Eurasia. So while I'm here, I don't even sleep. It's totally demented. And of course, the big story of the week, of the months, and of the millennium is Sy Hersh's report.
That was explosive. I mean, no pun intended. I keep saying it, but
literally. So, and it's wow. My inbox is exploding with people reacting to it, and some of my sources, friends, a lot of people from the US are sending stuff. I would say that 90% they say Sy is absolutely correct. There may be some problems in the narrative. It's a very complex narrative. The way it is woven, of course, there are some non sequiturs, there are some dead ends, there are some things that don't connect. But I know how Sy work. All of us foreign correspondents, we work more or less the same way. If we have a surefire source, we will build a story around what this source is telling us. And of course, we will collect extra sources and then weave our narrative. This is what Sy did this time, of course. He had an absolutely surefire source.
Yeah, he wouldn't have published it otherwise. I mean...
he would not have published it because it's a tremendous risk to publish a report like that if it's not fully backed up. And I'm sure all of us, Ray McGovern, people who worked at the CIA, we are getting returns from people that we know in Washington or that we met in Washington, and most of them are saying, yes, that's it. That's the gist of the story is there. The details it doesn't matter in the end, and it's extremely damaging because it implicates directly not only the teleprompter reader, but of course the toxic Straussian neocon neoliberal con trio, Sullivan, Blinken, and Nuland. I would say that none of us had any idea that they were so implicated in the operational details of this whole thing from the beginning. But that's apparently what it was. In terms of how it happened, of course, Russian SVR, foreign intelligence, they had a pretty good idea. Of course, this was a state secret. There were some balloons at the time in September, and these balloons were pointing basically at MI6 and the Polish Navy, Polish divers, etc. Never the Russians mentioned Norwegians.
They didn't.
So this is something very interesting that we would have to, if we manage to have some in-depth conversations with Russian intel in Moscow or in Russia, of course, and if they would answer our questions, assuming this is not because it's still state secret.
Yeah,
they probably had information about the Norwegians, but they decided not to disclose it. So this is also very, the interest is parallel to the fact that Sy doesn't even mention MI6.
He doesn't. I was surprised because we invented this kind of sabotage.
I was very surprised about that. There must be a very serious reason. And it's not that MI6 was not part of the whole thing. Probably Sy could not 100% confirm their role in the whole operation. And of course, Sy is very meticulous. He will not print something that he doesn't have at least a lateral confirmation.
Right.
So we can trust him on that.
His past stories and accolades, the
everything,
Abu Ghraib,
everything.
It speaks for itself.
His reputation speaks for himself, and his reputation is unrivaled.
Yeah,
among all of us, foreign journalists, correspondents, etc. Sy is the holy grail of investigative journalism. There's no question about that.
Yeah,
but he said that he spent 3 months working on this story, which is a lot.
It is.
And basically, he, I don't know if he traveled to Denmark, Sweden, or Norway. I think the whole research was inside the deep state with his absolutely fabulous carnet d'adresse. He knows literally everybody, from different administrations, and for the past 50 years on top of it, So
yeah, exactly. So, this goes back.
So we can retrace his steps and how he built this story. So there are some serious problems. We have to talk about that. As much as we admire Sy, what
did you find was not adding up, or you found was a problem?
The fact that the CIA gets away too lightly. That's not how it works. I'm sorry. Okay, the first part, the conceptualizing, the Straussians, the meetings between State Department, National Security Council, etc. Right. But when it comes to the CIA and the fact that, William Burns was involved, but apparently, according to the narrative, reluctantly. Mm-hmm. I'm not so sure about that. And obviously, Sy doesn't get into details on the real role of William Burns in the whole thing, current CIA director, who actually is one of the few CIA operatives who actually knows something about Russia.
Right, he was ambassador at one point to Russia.
He was an ambassador, so he does know something about Russia. Like Ray McGovern already, he spoke about Burns. He said, yeah, he's competent in what he does. So, considering the level of stupidity in the whole United States government at the moment, especially because of the neocons and neoliberal cons, that is like saying the guy is Wittgenstein, Well, anyway, and there was something that I don't remember the exact phrasing, but this was being concocted and organized even before the Russians sent those letters to the Pentagon in December 2022,
right,
when they were asking for indivisibility of security discussions between Eastern Europe, Western Europe, Eastern Europe, and Russia. So the plot started let's say maybe in the fall of 2021.
That's how it sounds, and I wouldn't be surprised.
That's how it sounds. So that would explain, at least partially, the fact that the Americans didn't even bother to answer the Russian letters, which were extremely serious.
Yeah.
Many of us published extracts of the letter. And of course, the Russian Foreign Ministry wrote extensively about the letters. Putin mentioned the letters many times in his speeches in December, then in January. So, okay, so they were already, their plan A was already, okay, let's blow it up. And of course, considering they are not very bright, this lot is not exactly very bright, no? The neoliberal con lot around the teleprompter reader. And obviously they telegraphed that they were going to do, and afterwards they telegraphed that they did it on top of it.
Newland and Blinken.
You remember that, Richard? They're not very bright. Now,
They're not.
If you do a high risk covert op like that, you're mum forever. That's how it works.
Yeah, exactly. Mum's the word. Yeah, you don't tell anyone.
And in fact, some of my friends from Washington sent me an email today. Look, these cycles they are doubling on a really bad hand, and every time that they double, it gets worse.
Yeah, I'm torn between, is this stupidity or is this, you know, they're trying to be provocative on purpose? Because the funny way that Tsai kind of negotiated this was that, well, they were the CIA took this and the divers took this as a signal where Biden said we're gonna,
right.
Yeah, and it's so funny, it's so American, right? Like, you know, okay, we can make it covert because now Biden said it on TV. It's so you know, laissez-faire.
And that's one of the fragments of the narrative, Richard, which is he could have. I understand why he had to be concise, and he had to get the main aspects of how the operation was built. So I'm sure he had to sacrifice in his final editing at least half of what he originally wrote. This is what we all do. That's how it is. You know, unfortunately, maybe he could do a remixed greatest hits version later on. His original copy, which would be obviously fascinating.
We would love to read that. For
plenty of detail that all of us will be, you know, dying to read. In fact, but it's a pity because this accounts for some of these loops and some of these. Gasps of air, you know, so we are trying to breathe it coming to the surface in the middle of the narrative.
Yeah.
But the narrative itself, the fact that extremely serious people in Washington, in New York, transatlantic, finance people are saying, look, that's it. Basically, the narrative stands from beginning to end with minor details. So this is very serious. And the fact, of course, that Tsai is being smeared, degraded.
Did you see this blowback from them?
Yes, I saw some of
it. It's ridiculous. They're saying it's fiction, and they always say this. They say this every story he does.
He's a blogger. Exactly. He has no credibility. It's a conspiracy theory. The usual shit of people who have an IQ much lower than room temperature, which is the case with all these people.
No, they got some balls, really. Like, I went and showed some of their responses yesterday. Let's say Bay of Pigs. They denied that at the time as well. We all know that they did it, you know. And every time there's one of these stories, of course they're going to deny it. But, you know, I think what's not going to help them this time is what you mentioned with how they, you know, cocky and gloating they were. That's
cocky and gloating. Absolutely.
Yeah, you know, when it happened, we knew it was them, and when they were being cocky, it became clear. But now having Tsai's confirmation, in addition, it gives us a very, very clear picture, much fuller.
And the thing is, I was thinking about the motivation of I'm going to call him the new deep throat, which is Tsai's #1 source, right? Uh-huh. What was his motivation?
That's a good question.
It's a good question. Did he have a hidden agenda? That's another question. And the third question is, was he playing Tsai? The #3 question, it's practically impossible to play Tsai considering his experience. His experience. So Tsai knew that, okay, I can trust it. Okay, I can trust his word, and I can trust him, you know. And that's why he built the whole story. If the guy had another agenda, that's more complicated, because don't forget that the deep state is a bunch of silos fighting each other all the time.
It is.
So something that it should be very profitable for all of us in the medium and in the short term and medium term. From which silo comes Deep Throat remixed? Because then we're going to see his motivation to spill the beans, practically the whole thing, and going all the way to the presidency. Is this anything that has to do with we need a fall guy, and the best possible fall guy is a guy that has already fallen, and the guy who keeps falling, the teleprompter reader? So this is something we should consider, no question. There are lots of rumors that some of these silos in the deep state want to get rid of a crash test dummy as soon as possible. So that's one possibility. We don't know, and we don't have a smoking gun. But all that plays, I would say, plays in the mind of Deep Throat Remixed when he decided to talk to Tsai openly and say, okay, I'm going to lay down the whole thing for you. So, and I understand that some of the criticism comes because of that.
Because it's
And the
one source.
criticism, exactly. And the criticism comes, okay, he only has one source, and this guy gave him practically the whole narrative. No, no, no. It's more complicated than that, because he had to go all across his cahier d'adresse exactly to, okay, what was the role of the US Navy? What was the role of the CIA, of different branches of the CIA? What was the role, if any, of the Danish, the Swedish, the Norwegians? That was proved. And of course, nothing about the MI6, which is, that's complicated. Because we know that MI6 was involved, because even Russian intelligence said, look, MI6 was involved. And Russian intelligence, they usually don't throw out these balloons for nothing, right?
Yeah.
But the whole thing, Richard, is in terms of investigative journalists and in terms of a geopolitical bombshell, it's something unequal.
Which is tough to do today with this war.
It's tough to do, and in Sai's case, even more, because he's completely banned from U.S. mainstream media. He had to open a Substack account to
this is something I wanted to
and he
talk
did
about,
and he did the right thing. When you have something like this, you have to self-publish, because you know nobody. And if somebody buys it from you, it's going to be a small website, and the repercussion will be very small. Considering that Sai has a name and he has credibility. Anything, if he opened a hot dog account and a hot dog stand and start selling copies, fax copies of this whole thing, everybody would buy it.
Yeah, they would. They couldn't get around it. You know,
self-publishing, very, very important.
But you saw Reuters; they called it a blog post, which I found is so.
Reuters called it a blog post.
That is petty, really.
Richard, what do you expect from these hacks that work for Reuters and AP? I met zillions of these poor souls in my career. You know, they have shitty jobs, shitty non-aircon rooms, or shitty rooms in shitty countries, including the US, by the way. And they are told what to do.
They're told what to do.
In fact, they write the story before they have one or two quotes that are inserted in the story that is already written. I saw this thing happening in front of me many times, you know. So what do you expect from these people? You know, they're poor sods, you know, whatever.
Truly, it's a very miserable existence. But you know, I think the fact that they're silent on about his story, you know, except for these smears, the silence is also something that tells us a lot. Don't you think that they won't touch it? Like, there's nothing in the Guardian, there's nothing in the New York Times. It's weird, because even if you want to deny it, you could still address it. Maybe, I don't know. It seems this is a national security case. So,
Richard, this is kryptonite for the U.S. mainstream media. It's out of the question for them to touch it. You know, apparently, who was on Tucker the other day talking about it? Somebody was on Tucker talking about it, nah? But that was it, apparently, in American mainstream media.
Yeah.
Forget about CNN, MSNBC, etc. touching this. No way. Not to mention the vassals here in Europe. French TV, German TV, Italian TV, Spanish TV, of course, no way. And the newspapers, the same thing. Blog, conspiracy theory, etc. So, and especially now that this coincided with the visit of the coke sniffer to Paris and London.
God, that was pathetic. I mean, seeing him.
It's so pathetic that we don't even need to talk about it, because I'm sure your audience.
No, I didn't even touch it. It's bad enough watching it myself. Never mind exposing them to it. But Pepe, you know, the attack on the pipeline. I mean, this is something they've wanted to do for a long time in whatever way you know, each administration had in mind. But you know, let's talk about oil and gas, because they put in this pathetic G7 price cap, and you know, it's the second one came in on February 5th. The first one was on December 5th. These two bans. Let's let's look at how effective this thing was. What is your take on it? Because it looks like a laughing stock to me. You know, like they haven't capped one single barrel of Russian oil.
Did you see what happened from yesterday to this morning? I think Russia's cutting off 500,000 barrels a day, which means what?
Up the price.
Immediately, the price of oil start going up again. So they're going to sell less oil for better price. So they're still going to make money anyway. So but the problem is these idiots, they don't know anything about energy markets. As most people who comment on military matters don't know shit about military. They don't know anything about physics or mathematics, for instance. They have humanities diplomas or whatever. So and that's the problem. That's the problem. And people who advise the European Union, for instance, on these matters, these are mediocrities from the Baltics, Poland, somewhere in Eastern Europe, etc. If you go to the European Commission and see how it works, you understand everything about the Kafkaesque edifice of the EU. Most people over there, they are there because of recommendations. Yeah, not because they are competent in they are in their bureaucratic careers. They are swirled from one post to another, and some of them even make commissioners. Commissioners on energy, for instance. Just to give an example about the EU's energy policy, they are discussing this since the late 1990s, and the EU never had, doesn't have, and will never have a unified energy policy. Their energy policy now in 2022, 2023 is sanction Russia to death. This is the EU energy policy. This is completely absurd. So you don't have a single oil and gas specialist to address them and say, look, these are the numbers. This is what we need to import. These are the providers. This is where we cannot get extra sources of energy. This is how much it's going to cost, etc. They don't. They are completely ideologized people, very, very petty-minded bureaucrats who are basically thinking about their retirement with full pension, not paying taxes. This is how Brussels works. Yeah. Unfortunately, most of your and our readers and viewers, if they had a chance to spend one day in Brussels, they would understand everything.
Yep. No, it's very, I dare say it's to the letter how you described it, because they just get these things through connections, these jobs. It's nothing to do with talent or competence
or competence.
Yeah, and it's funny because you got people in the industry, steel industry in Germany, glass industry France, who are like begging them, please listen to us. It goes over their heads, one in through in ear, one out the other, and
you're right. And they don't have access to
mainstream,
and they don't have access to mainstream media as well. You find them in small blogs, in Telegram channels. There are a lot of extremely competent oil and gas people here in Europe, in France, in Germany, and in Italy as well. The ones that I know in Italy, for instance, a few months ago, they were saying, but this is absolute suicide. It's completely absurd. Yeah. And we're not going to have extra sources of oil and gas apart from Russia. That's it. Everything is blocked. Turkmenistan, Qatar, Algeria, they already have their list of customers, and they're not going to sell. Out of the question, they're going to sell for us because they don't have spare capacity. Just like Saudi Arabia doesn't have spare oil capacity. But Saudi Arabia is different. Saudi Arabia want to make money selling less oil, which is the same thing that Russia is doing now. And Russia didn't even ask for it. They gave it to Russia. Look, from now on, you're going to sell less oil and make more money.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
What a strategy.
Remember Saudi Arabia was the one that said 2 million barrels cut. Russia wanted just 1 million cut. And they were like, no, 2.
because they knew that they could sell this for at least 40-50% more, including their let's say very strong client, the Chinese. So what would happen in these circumstances? Of course, they would not double the price for the Chinese. They would make a super deal for them and for the Chinese, where they will make more money producing less. The Chinese will pay less, but will get all the quantities that they need. And this is basically what they do. Yeah. This is basically what Xi Jinping and MBS did when they met in Riyadh. They made a deal, and the deal is going to be long-term, acceptable for both parties. But this is how diplomacy works, Richard. The problem is we have a pipeline-blowing, decaying empire who doesn't know the meaning of diplomacy anymore.
Sorry, Pepe, I think you're cutting out. Can you just repeat the last sentence?
Yes, basically about the disappearance of diplomacy around the collective West from in all Atlanticist circles, in fact. And if they had any possibility of getting diplomacy back on the table, they would discuss, of course, they would have been discussing with everybody in the West and let's say OPEC plus, let's say a delegation of the collective West talking to OPEC plus to find a mutually acceptable development for everybody. They didn't even try.
No.
So OPEC plus, in fact, they said, okay, we're going to do it in our terms. And these terms are basically defined by Putin and MBS. And it's perfect for them. You know, so and soon and when I say soon, it could be even this year, 2023. We're going to have a gas OPEC.
Yeah, you think so?
It's very possible. This is something that we should investigate more in the Persian Gulf and in Central Asia, because then we would have Russia, the Central Asian producers, and maybe Qatar joining them as well. And we're going to have, this is something that the Russians have been talking about for years, in fact. They wanted a gas OPEC starting years ago. Iran as well. So can we imagine if we have major gas producers, apart from, Norway is not a major gas producer. Turkmenistan is, but Turkmenistan sells all its gas basically via that pipeline to China. So we have Russia, Iran, Qatar, and 3 Central Asian producers. That's enormous.
It's game over.
It's game over. Then you're going to have the oil OPEC plus gas OPEC. Game over, of course. And trading bypassing the dollar, because this is going to be basically we can say more or less with some assurance that in the medium term to long term, the yuan is going to be the preferred currency for all these transactions, while we don't get a certified currency, which is going to be, it's complicated because it has to be a multilateral agreement between BRICS plus, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and the Eurasia Economic Union. They will have to, first probably we're going to have a series of currencies, and then we're going to have a unified currency based on gold and commodities. And
real money.
Real money, you're right. With Russia and full Russia-China Shanghai Cooperation Organization backing, and that includes in India, another BRICS member, and Iran, which is going to be a BRICS plus member, probably starting this year at the next BRICS summit in South Africa. And then we're going to have, maybe in the spectrum of 2, 3, 4 years, this commodity gold-based alternative currency. There's a lot of people in Russia who are, even apart from Glaziev, Glaziev is discussing with the Chinese, but inside the Eurasia Economic Union. There are some independent Russian economists who are coming up with their own ideas as well. So sooner or later, we're going to have this brainstorming with Russians, Chinese, Iranians, Central Asians, Indians, etc. Okay, this is going to be the path towards our alternative currency. And then it's not going to be Bretton Woods 3. It's going to be the death of Bretton Woods. It's a completely different story.
Did you see how in Dubai the refiners, the Indian refiners, they're of course, you know, they're bringing in Russian oil and slapping a new label on it, but more importantly,
and slapping a label, exactly.
They're paying in dinar. Yes. They're not paying dollars anymore.
No,
this is what's so funny.
Using the dinar, and obviously the Emirates, they love it. They absolutely love.
Of course, it's good for them.
It came out of the sky for them, you know. And of course, they're going to invest that in turning Abu Dhabi and Dubai even more important hubs than they already are. One for energy and the other one for investment services, tourism, you name it, you know.
Yeah.
Leisure industry, luxury industry, you name it.
They'll come up with it.
For all those aspects that we know very well about bing bing Dubai, bling bling Dubai, but Dubai is going to be one of the capitals of the 21st century, like it or not.
Pepe, you wrote an article, and I also talked about this link of SPFS. So that's the Russian alternative to SWIFT and their messaging system, with the Iranian one with CEPAM.
CEPAM, the Iranian one, right?
Isn't this explosive? Isn't this crazy?
It is. It is. It's so explosive, Richard, that you don't read a word about that in American mainstream media. And that proves how explosive it is. This is the equivalent of blowing up Nord Stream 1 and 2, you know, in terms of alternative payment systems. Because this is the other players in Eurasia are going to be watching how the Russians and the Iranians are going to use this payment system for their trade using the international north-south transportation corridor, which is basically the anti-Suez Canal, Russia, Iran, India mechanism. Extremely, it's so serious, once again, that I'll have to go back to it. You don't read a line about that in American mainstream media. And you don't expect CNN to do a story about the international north-south transportation corridor, you know. And this is fantastic because now the Russians and the Iranians are investing on both sides. The Russians are upgrading the port of Astrakhan, for instance, which is going to be their main Caspian hub to connect to Iran via the Caspian. The Iranians are upgrading their ports as well. They are upgrading railroads in Russia and in Iran, connecting with the south of Iran, Persian Gulf, Arabia, Gulf of Oman, and then Arabian Sea, and then connecting to Mumbai in India. And the Indians are looking at that, of course. They have already their base, their port base in Iran, which is the port of Chabahar. And then because the Indians will be thinking in exporting to Iran, exporting to Russia, but also exporting to Central Asia, to Afghanistan and Central Asia via the port of Chabahar. So you have, for instance, a cargo ship coming from Mumbai. He docks at Chabahar. So he has merchandise that can stay in India, or stay in Iran, I'm sorry, can go to Russia, can go via highway to Afghanistan, and then to other nations in Central Asia. So India has its mini new Silk Road towards Central Asia via Iran. So everybody in this transportation corridor gets something out of it. It's a win-win-win-win-win situation for everybody. Now, for Russia, of course, because it's much easier for them to export to Iran and to India via the Indian Ocean. For Iran, obviously, because they'll be exporting north towards Russia, and then some other European nations, Eastern European nations as well, and also to India and South Asia. They can export to Bangladesh via India as well, even Pakistan. And Pakistan, of course, they will have to use Pakistani ports. That's another story. And this is an integration of the international north-south transportation corridor, the new Silk Roads, the Chinese, basically Belt and Road, the Chinese new Silk Roads in Iran, because they are not going to India, but they're going to Iran. And of course, they go through Russia, but they are under sanctions. So that decomplicates the Chinese as well, because the Chinese can even use the same thing. They can export via their maritime Silk Road to Iran, and then Iran distributes the merchandise via the Caspian to Russia and Russian satellites as well. So everybody is going to be profiting from this corridor. And that's why the payment system is important, because it's the first balloon. If it works in 1 year, other nations and other traders in the region are going to start using the same payment system, bypassing the US dollar. Of course, not Dubai. Of course, Dubai is still SWIFT territory, and Dubai is still empire territory. So that's a completely different story.
It is, yeah. But I think it's incredible, because before we saw this kind of this merger of Mir with Union Pay, and then Iran was interested in it. Turkey expanded Mir payment, and then also Venezuela is interested in it. And this is really another step in that direction of uniting all of them. I think it's incredible.
Another step, Richard. Fascinating. When I was in Uzbekistan, in the heartland of the Silk Road in summer, and every ATM accepted Union Pay and Mir cards. How fucking cool is that? You are in the middle of a road going to Samarkand. You go to an ATM and he accepts local Uzbek cards, Mir cards from Russia, and Union Pay from China.
That's crazy.
So you can see the new Silk Roads in your face.
Wow.
Payment system already working. For instance, Russian tourists visiting Uzbekistan in summer, no problem. They had their Mir cards. It's like they were in Russia. Same thing with there were not many Chinese, of course, because of COVID. But the few Chinese that they were traveling, they could use Union Pay everywhere. And soon we're gonna see this all across Eurasia. We're gonna see it hopefully this year, if not this year, but next year. In Iran, you'll be able to pay with Mir cards and Union Pay cards, which until recently in Iran, of course, because you cannot use Visa and MasterCard, in Iran, you couldn't use any card at all. Now it's a completely different story. Because and this is part of this integration, and it's part also the new Silk Roads. Union Pay wants to be in the Iranian market. For them, it's excellent, and they can receive tourists from Iran as well traveling in China. And in Southeast Asia, of course, Southeast Asia, everywhere you go in Southeast Asia, you can use Union Pay, which was not, to give you an idea, all of you, it was not the case 5 or 6 years ago. Now everywhere you can buy. You want to buy some noodles in a shop in Thailand. You can pay with Union Pay or with WeChat.
Yeah,
you have your WeChat icon. There you go. Soon this is going to happen. For Iran, this is going to be fantastic, and for Russia because of the sanctions as well. Because Russian banks need to do deals with all these banks that cannot be sanctioned by the Americans, and that's the problem. When you think in terms of Russian banks uniting with Chinese banks, because the Americans threaten Chinese banks directly. If you make unions with Russian banks, we're going to sanction you as well. So the Chinese are trying to find a way how we're going to do it. So if you have a payment system, it's different, because then you can issue a card linked to an alternative payment system,
right?
That doesn't involve US dollars or euros.
I don't get why they didn't do it sooner.
Happening at the same time, Richard. The fascinating is it's breakneck speed just to keep up with everything that is happening. We work 24 hours a day on that.
Yeah, really, really. And I saw you talking about this also with them trying to confiscate these Russian assets. And because you remember when the sanctions started a year ago, they took what is it, roughly half the wealth. But tell us more about that. You tweeted about this earlier.
The thing is, they're still trying to confiscate Russian foreign reserves in dollars and euros, which are outside of Russia. This means in Western banks. There is no legal framework, but they are trying very hard to find it. If they do it, expect Russian retaliation in terms of confiscating Western assets still in Russia. And the last number that we had, it's more or less the same. The value of Western and especially European assets in Russia is more or less equivalent to the money that they are stealing. So this is if they do this of course the EU, considering how rabidly Russophobic and ideologized they are, sooner or later they come up with something like that. But the blowback is going to be, and obviously companies are going to start telling their national governments, "Are you nuts? They're going to confiscate our assets in Russia. Okay, are you going to pay us for
back,
that?
Yeah.
Of course not, because you don't have money. You borrow from the markets every day because you're all in deficit."
Yeah.
So, so the snowball, if they do something like this, is going to be wow.
You saw. I wanted to ask you, Pepe, because you're a Brazilian, and since the last time we spoke, Lula's been reelected, and
Yes.
he's now president. How good is that for BRICS? You know, considering he was Brazil was an original founding member under him.
Of course. It's a very complex answer, Richard. I'll try to be brief because Brazil is a nutcase geopolitically and geoeconomically. There's a breaking news today, which is very positive. I tweeted about it a few minutes ago, in fact. Dilma Rousseff, former Brazilian president, is going to be the next president of the BRICS Bank, the NDB. So this is very good news because when I visited Brazil in December, I was invited to spend some time there, do some talks, etc. And I met President Dilma one day. By the way, the day that Brazil was kicked out of the World Cup.
Oh no, that's a very bad occasion. Very
exactly.
Bad.
So at the time, it was in the air that Lula had approached President Dilma and said, "Look, anything you want is yours." And she was still thinking about it, but the rumor was that she will do something inside BRICS or very close to BRICS. We didn't know that it would be such an important post. Now she's the president of BRICS. She's going to live in Shanghai, and she's going to coordinate all the investment and lending policy of the BRICS Bank, which is going to grow in the next few years exponentially, especially now that we're going to have BRICS Plus.
Right.
And BRICS Plus implies that the first top 3 candidates to enter BRICS soon, which could be this year or next year, are Iran, Argentina, and
Saudi?
Algeria. And the second tier, it's Turkey, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the Emirates. So this is absolutely...
I mean, if they do this at this speed as well in the next 2 years, I think that's it's really astronomical. And
no, you're right.
The rate of growth is something I don't think any of us really thought was going to happen.
No,
so quickly.
And none of us could ever imagine that. In fact, everything that is happening inside these multilateral organizations, because there were the impression that we had in the past was that there was a sort of deep slumber inside BRICS, inside Shanghai Cooperation Organization, inside the Eurasia Economic Union, and now everybody is like
they want to join the party.
7th gear in a Maserati turbo, and we look around there and say, wow, and obviously they are all, if they are not working together, sitting at the same table yet, they are already coordinating their next steps, because sooner or later they're going to have to sit, all these multilateral organizations, they'll have to sit at the same table to coordinate lending policies, to coordinate who's going to be our next members. Are members of BRICS, there are members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Is it the same thing? Or can we expand? Can we use BRICS and Shanghai Cooperation Organization to keep expanding? And soon we're going to have not a G20 among all these. We're going to have a G30 or G40 or G50, in fact. So the global South, finally, something that they didn't have until the recent past, they have the multilateral institutional framework to develop an alternative world. And this is something that, from the point of view of the old elites and from the point of view of the Americans, it's beyond, it's a cosmic anathema. This is something that it's like a hidden planet that you never saw. They cannot even start to understand what that means. And obviously, if they did, they would at least, okay, let's sit down at the same table with us again. Maybe we can study ways of living together. No,
of course not.
Don't expect. Expect, of course, psycho killers of the Sullivan, Nuland, and Blinken variety coming up with let's blow up a pipeline.
Maybe a port also,
let's blow up a port. The Iranians have a port over there. They're selling to India. Let's blow it up.
Don't give them ideas. Oh man, Saudi Arabia is a shocker though, because I mean, the Americans need them, to prop up their dollar. And, obviously we're not exaggerating. It's not like they broke away completely, but they have expressed will to join BRICS.
Yes.
And I mean, there's no response from Washington. They don't seem to understand.
No, they don't understand, Richard. In fact, there's no response because they don't know what's going on. The only response that we have is those epidermic accesses of hysteria. MBS, now we cannot trust him anymore. MBS is crazy. So everybody's crazy. If you don't agree with the empire, you are the new Hitler, you are crazy, you are a conspiracy theorist. It's impossible to have a discussion of substance about anything that involves alternative means of conducting your geopolitical or geoeconomic policy that does not mean being like a liver sausage Schultz that accepts everything that the Americans tell him to do.
He's a real liverwurst. Yeah.
Well, a liverwurst.
No, this guy is something else. I mean, I couldn't believe this Baerbock, she's sitting there like cheering on, like we're in a war against Russia, and then when people called that out, they issue a statement saying this is Russian propaganda. No, it's your mouth. Like she said that on tape that they're in a war against Russia. It's her words. And then Scholz, he flip-flopped again like a sausage and just gave them what they want. Here's some tanks. They're pathetic.
In fact, it was even more absurd. After she said that, the foreign ministry in Berlin issued a communique saying, look, the foreign ministry believes that we are not at war.
I've never seen. This is so embarrassing. This is so embarrassing.
Imagine if Bismarck was alive. He would hang these people from lampposts in the main square in Munich, all of them.
I've never seen a foreign ministry have to embarrass the foreign minister.
Exactly.
It's really bad.
And vice versa. Exactly. Yeah. And vice versa.
Jesus Christ, what a nightmare.
Well, look, I'm getting some echoes here and there. Of course, we try to be optimistic in the middle of this deluge, disaster, or whatever you want to call it. That the next leadership, the next government in Germany is going to destroy everything that this traffic light coalition is doing. But for that to happen means German industrialists have to get their act together, find the ideal candidate, and win the next elections. So this is a very complicated process, but at least they're already thinking about it, because they see not only how their industries are being completely destroyed, but the whole German foreign policy and development model is being destroyed by these cycles.
It completely. It's a 180, a real 180. I mean,
a real 180, exactly. So there are a lot of very, very bright and very well prepared people in Germany. So we all hope that the problem is they have to wait for the next elections. Ideally, this thing should happen in the next few months. Not to mention until the end of the year, considering that by the end of this year, Germany will not have enough energies to survive the next winter.
Yeah, because this
has already been proved. Exactly.
This winter, they managed to fill up the tanks. But next winter is a different story. So
no, it's a completely different story, and they won't have enough. Everybody knows that. So they have a few months to get their act together. It's very, very fun. Okay, let's speculate a little bit on something that at least is uplifting. It's not let's blow up stuff. Assuming the war in the next few months, Russia takes it to a place where they will force the West, basically the Americans and NATO, to sit down and discuss, which is not going to be a ceasefire. The Russians are going to impose what's going to happen next. And then the Germans may say, okay, now this thing is over. If we are going to reconnect with Russia, might as well reconnect with the new government. And this is what obviously the businessmen in Germany will be thinking, because then they will be able to, in the next few months, solve Germany's energy problem for next winter and solve the future of German industry in short, medium, long term. Of course, this is an extremely optimistic scenario. I would say that the realistic scenario is that they're going to keep going down heavily as they are now, and 1 year from now, Germany will be the wasteland.
After World War II, I'm glad Seymour Hersh he brought this up in his article with Ostpolitik and Willy Brandt, because this is really important. And obviously the Germans, they've lost sight of that completely now. And I'm just thinking, if this scenario you talked about does happen, how from a Russian point of view, how do you ever trust the Germans again? Because all it takes is the Americans putting a little pressure and they flip.
Exactly, Richard. And that's the problem. I'm glad that you brought it up, because the Russians are going to discuss among themselves. So can we trust anything that these vassals say or write? No, because they were always under the yoke of his master's voice, Leviathan. So it's in the end, it's not going to change, because Germany, as we know, for 75 years is a neo-colony, and it's occupied land, just like Italy is an occupied land. So we just look at the map and we see a NATO bases in Germany and in Italy, and we get the whole picture.
Yeah,
and this is not going to change with a change of leadership, a change of government. This would change only if there was a systemic change in the way Europe is conceived and functions. This means what? First of all, the total collapse of NATO, and the second of all, which is even more complicated, the collapse of the European Union from the inside, which is something that is already happening in slow motion. But during this year, it can get into velocity status soon, right? And if there is not a systemic remix of Europe, everything that we have been watching from last year to this year will keep going on.
They're cowards,
because nothing systemically will be changing inside the hegemon, and we know that it's not going to change.
I fear you're right. Yeah,
it's not a bipartisan question. It's a question about how the system was built, even before the Second World War, but especially after the Second World War. You cannot dismantle this 75-year-old system just like that. Out of the question. And that includes, of course, the end of Bretton Woods, the end of the petrodollar. We know that all these processes are advancing, each on its own track, but it may be a matter of decades until we see results, positive results, right?
I mean, it looks that way because the way that they kind of allow the Americans to walk all over them is really disgusting, because you obviously make compromises with your ally and so on, but they blew up the pipeline. I mean, this is a terrorist attack. It's like one of the biggest acts of industrial sabotage in Europe that I can think of in history, and they just don't say anything. Right. We don't know who did it. Like it's I've never seen an attack disappear from the news so quickly. It's crazy. They have no self-respect.
No, and that shows to you and to all of you how easy it is to just issue an order, and the whole mainstream media in the collective West shuts up.
Yeah, it's
so easy. And so even for us professional journalists, we are still wow. We thought it would be more. Nowadays, okay, there are different channels, there are lateral channels. No. It's a block. It's an iron wall, and nobody dares going against it. And we come back once again to independent sources of information.
Right.
And Sy, which is the most decorated investigative journalist of many generations, in the end, even Sy had to do it.
Yeah, it's quite an endorsement, I would say, of independent media. Yeah.
Yes.
The balloon, Pepe, the balloon. Let's talk about that.
Oh my God! No! Oh no! Not the balloon! Not the balloon!
But Blinken ran away. Oh no!
I think now all of us, we all know the whole balloon story. The only thing we can I would say the only original thing we can say at the moment is that this is the empire that blew up a pipeline, the most egregious act of terrorism since 9/11, and it's the 9/11 undersea, in fact. And at the same time, they used a $400,000 missile to shoot a meteorological balloon. This is the empire you're dealing with. You know, it's self-explanatory, I would say, the whole thing.
But Blinken, he canceled his visit to China. I heard whispers that they weren't even expecting him. Is that correct?
Yes. The Chinese knew that this was not going to happen. The Chinese foreign ministry, which is extremely circumspect, of course, but they knew that Blinken was playing with, should I stay, should I go? They knew that something would come up and he wouldn't go. Especially Richard and all of you. They had nothing to talk about. Can you imagine Blinken sitting down with, well, every time that Blinken sits down with hardcore Chinese officials like Yang Jiechi or Wang Yi, the former foreign minister, he is, they make shark's fin soup of him, you know, he's pathetic. So can you imagine he is in Beijing and the Chinese said, okay, what about these sanctions on semiconductors? What's your game? What is he going to say? Sorry, first of all, because he doesn't even understand.
He'll check back with them.
Exactly. And second, because he wouldn't have nothing to say. What would he say about Taiwan? He doesn't even understand the Taiwan dossier. Blinken knows nothing about China. Blinken, like all these neocons, they know, entre guillemets, as the French say, between commas, they know a little bit about Europe and maybe Eastern Europe. They know nothing about Eurasia and much less about China. Sorry, and how to deal diplomatically with China. So there was nothing to talk about. And obviously the Chinese can identify this miles away. So they said, no, he's not coming, and they're going to find a pretext. Nobody knew that the pretext would be something so stupid.
Yeah, I've never seen a foreign minister cancel a visit over a balloon. I mean, this is, you know, it's like an alternate reality or something.
Richard, we can expect anything from this collection of Straussian neocons, sub-neocons, neo-neocons,
really?
and neoliberal cons. In fact, you know, not only the toxic trio, but the people who are behind them. These are even more toxic, like Robert Kagan. You know, these people are much more toxic than the actors.
Yeah,
who are play acting in the Biden administration. There's nothing else you can expect from it. And you read the think tanks behind them. What our friend Ray McGovern brilliantly described as a MISIMAT, the military, industrial, congressional, intelligence, academia, think tank, media complex.
It's quite the acronym, yeah.
it's quite the acronym. It's brilliant, isn't it? And what do they publish? The reports. How we can have the Atlantic Council in late October saying we have to go there and smash Russia, destroy everything. And we have the Rand Corporation 3.5 months later say, maybe this is not a very good idea. Maybe we should try to end this war as soon as we can, because our real war is against China. So how can you take these people seriously? Of course, they take themselves seriously.
I'm sure
they have those meetings. They have these enormous papers with lots of experts. You know, spend 6 months drafting a paper, and then the paper lands on the cover of the Washington Post or Foreign Affairs, etc. They take themselves seriously, and they basically talk trash about stuff that they don't know, which is essentially the whole of Eurasia. And the Eurasian interconnections, and how Eurasia is being integrated little by little in different areas, relationship between Eurasia and Africa and Latin America. They don't know anything about that.
But they know about Taiwan, right? You know, so China's going to invade Taiwan. I'm telling you, Pepe.
they know everything about Taiwan and how we're going to support Taiwan, and Taiwan is going to smash any Chinese invading force. These people have never even been to Taiwan, Richard. They don't know, for instance, that most engineers working in Taiwan, they go back and forth in China and vice versa. They don't know that 50% of Taiwanese exports are to China. They don't know that the industries are interconnected. They don't know shit.
Yeah.
They don't even know that they speak the same language. Obviously, these people don't speak Mandarin, so they don't know that, with different accents, of course. So, so what do you expect from them? You know, so I would say that for all of us, independent journalists and analysts, we should concentrate on what the 88% of the world is doing, and forget about these cycles. Forget about it. Okay, we register, of course, in a tweet, in one of your shows, in a paper, etc. Whatever. But we don't give too much importance because it's not important and it's not relevant. What is relevant, of course, is when their machinations are uncovered, which is the case of with Si's report. This is very important, but this is once in a blue moon. Most of their hidden machinations, or most of their covert ops, in fact, CIA covert ops, most of them are really, really invisible. And we only know what's going on much later.
Yeah.
So at least when they emerge, at least we can backtrack and, you know, rewind and tell the story. But it's not all the time. The rest of our time, I think we should dedicate to something extremely positive that is, I would say it's happening for the first time in the past 250 years, which is the reemergence of Eurasia as the center of the geo-economic world.
I keep saying this. This is the biggest consequence of the Ukraine war. It's BRICS. It's the emergence of the global South. It's crazy, the ripple effect. It's gone so deep so far, and I think it's beyond our wildest imaginations. And I saw actually. I saw the Russians, they're going to start producing more of their own drones now. But my point here is that the fact Iran was also working with them on this, I mean, this is also something, a new dimension. I don't think you've ever seen that before. There was China and Russia doing military exercises with South Africa also. These are also things you haven't seen before. So it's cooperation on every level. It's economic, it's financial, military. Really, it's something, really.
Well, very important, Richard. For instance, the example of Russia-Iran. There was a lot of resistance on both sides for years or decades. And, you know, stuff that was not solved before in terms of, you know, Russian occupation of Iranian lands, the problem at the Caspian Sea, which it has been a very complicated negotiation between the 5 littoral states of the Caspian Sea to divide the Caspian riches among the 5. And of course, ideologically as well, the former Soviet Union and the Communist Iran. It's not exactly the best of friends, but they got over that completely, because now they are subordinating everything that happened in the past to what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah.
And in terms of burying the Cold War, we see these great Eurasian superpowers burying the Cold War by acts, by deeds, by their new unions. Of course, they are recalcitrants, I would say, like Japan. Japan is a very complicated case. And because Japan is so insular, and because of empire, they have a superiority complex over other Asians. Yeah. Not only South Koreans and Chinese, but other Asians as a whole, against Southeast Asians, against Indonesians, Vietnamese, Cambodians, etc. It's very complicated. The Japanese are very, very... It's no wonder that they, during the Second World War, they wanted to install this greater co-prosperity sphere, which is a sort of a Japanese Reich all over Asia. So this is very complicated. As much as we may engage with the Japanese and like so many aspects of extremely rich Japanese culture, but geopolitically, they're tough cookies, you know, and no wonder they are an American colony.
Yeah.
And in their mindset, they are still an American colony. It's going to be very hard for them to liberate themselves from America, and especially now that the Americans, because they know when you are the hyperpower, you understand the frailties of your vassals, right? They are starting to instrumentalize Japan against China medium, long term already. So we can even envision a scenario mid-term to long term of the spearhead of the empire against China. It's not going to be Taiwan. It could possibly be Japan. And this is
Really?
a very worrying development. I'm not talking now, of course. The next years or the next decade, you know, the Americans will try to use Japan against China. There's no question about it. Absolutely no question about it. So this is complicated. But apart from them, everybody else is trying. Even India and Pakistan, they are inside the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, so they have institutional means of cooperating.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe Pakistan will be in BRICS Plus in the near future as well. And India, China, and Pakistan is something that the Chinese try to prove to Indians. Look, this is not a partnership against you. This is a mutual beneficial partnership for us Chinese and for the Pakistanis, but it's not directed against you Indians. And this is something that the Chinese diplomats try to explain to Indian diplomats for, I would say years. And this is something that Putin, when Putin got Xi to talk to Modi in these BRICS summits, this is what Putin is basically saying to both. Look, you're not enemies. You are complementary. You are two big Asian superpowers. Right. You know, get your acts together. Don't let the hegemon play divide and rule. This is what they're doing. They're playing divide and rule. You know, and you know that. The Chinese know it. The Indians don't.
Do you see the difference? Like the attitude?
Yeah, you see the difference. Exactly, Richard. Because the Indian elite, most Indian elites are Anglo-American, more Anglo than American. Eh? They studied in English universities and all that. And of course, they adopted the mentality of the former colonizer. It's terrible.
Yeah.
It's terrible. But you see a new generation of Indians which are international, and they understand this internationalization of India and the internationalization of Eurasia as well. And India as part of Eurasia, and not India as a sub-colony of the West.
Yep.
So all these mechanisms are very complex, but we have reason to hope because they are getting their act together in different latitudes, you know, and we see it every day, you know.
It's really interesting you mentioned Japan because I you know, half my education was in French, so I don't think this is a term used in English, but in French they say la triade, which is, you know, the three poles. Japan is one of them, right? So EU, United States, and Japan. It's fully integrated in the flow of capital, you know, finance. So it makes, you know, it's not just about the U.S. bases there in World War II. It's also the modern iteration of Japan. It's fully, you know, integrated into the West. So it makes sense that they would use it against China.
When you spend time, I'm sure you spend time in Tokyo, no? Tokyo,
no, unfortunately, never been.
No, Tokyo is a Japanese city, but at the same time, Tokyo is an American city. Yeah. You can live in Tokyo as an American. I did it myself.
There are many cities like that.
I did a test. You don't even need to speak Japanese living in Tokyo. And you can live an American lifestyle and connect to everything American. It's like if you were in a Japantown in LA.
Right.
Only it's Tokyo. You know, this is something that you cannot do in Jakarta, in Manila, obviously not in Shanghai, in Kuala Lumpur.
I know what you're saying. Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying, right? It's in terms of this cultural invasion, even subconscious. In Japan, even if they don't understand English or if they speak rudimentary English, but they are plugged into American lifestyle, American thinking, American pop culture, and the American subconscious.
Yep.
Which is something that you don't find in any other part of Asia, in fact. South Korea, for instance, South Korea, they have, Seoul is a South Korean city, completely. Their identity is firmly there, Yeah. You cannot live in Seoul like if you are living in Chicago, for instance. No way, So, wow. We could go on forever talking about cultural clash.
We could.
We both grew up in different cultures, so for us it's normal.
It's a beautiful thing, and I think that's why we appreciate this emergence of Global South and BRICS, and it's very, very nice. We truly cherish it, I think, and understand the value of it. And it's something that, you mentioned, for example, Putin, how he's getting the Chinese and Indians together. You look at the difference in attitude of construction versus, the British and American foreign policy, which is divide and conquer. It's so, it's a complete opposite. And
it's like the only thing that they learned from the Roman Empire, right, Richard? Divide e impera. Divide and rule. It's the only thing that they learn.
Exactly, yeah.
They can quote Seneca, they can quote Tacitus and all that, which they never read, obviously. But the only thing that they actually apply, Thucydides, which Graham Allison, his reading of Thucydides is ridiculous. In fact, some of the best Thucydides scholars are Italian. And when they talk about Allison, it's quello cretino, una rivista.
A cretin. That word made its way into the English language, so
made its way into English, exactly.
Pepe, are you writing any new books? Before I let you go, are you working on anything?
Yes, but the problem is that COVID killed my book. In fact. My previous book was about the New Silk Roads, and now it's changed. It's going to be about the interaction of the New Silk Roads, the international North-South transportation corridor. So it's going to be a book about the integration of Eurasia, and I want to draw parallels to the ancient Silk Roads and to previous history of Eurasia in the heartland, in Central Asia, in Anatolia, in West Asia, in Iran, in parts of Russia, in the Black Sea, in the Caspian. So I want to do a mix of geopolitical reportage nowadays and historical time travel.
I love that.
The old Silk Roads.
I love
but
this.
It's a very difficult book to write. So I'm not sure I'll have time anytime soon to start again. I have a lot of stuff already written, so I have to put it all together. No? But at the same time, there's going to be a very interesting book coming out, but in Italian later this year. I'm doing the introduction and the editing with lots of different authors. And it's about deglobalization, but deglobalization seen from a multilateral perspective. So we have Russian authors, Chinese, Europeans, West Asians. So this could be something really interesting because it's a dialogue of texts as well. So it's a sort of a text equivalent of the Chinese people-to-people's exchange, like Xi Jinping says about the New Silk Roads. The Silk Roads were always people-to-people exchanges.
Yep.
So you had a caravan coming, and then they meet a monk from China. And say, what is this thing, Buddhism? Explain it to me. Okay, let me sell you something. Let me sell a precious stone that I have. So this is what happened in the Silk Road. And nowadays, of course, it happens with smartphones, with high-speed rail, etc. So a way to connect all that is this book is a way to connect all that. And my book later on, I hope I can do something similar as well.
Yeah, you owe it to the world, Pepe, because more people need to find this out and understand this. And I think it was last year, Syria signed up on the New
Syria is an official Silk Road partner.
Right. Yeah, and I've been to Palmyra, which was on the Silk Road originally. So it's an ancient city.
When were you in Palmyra, Richard?
I was a kid. I think it's in 2000, early 2000s.
A long time ago.
Yeah,
a long time ago. No, I saw you had been there recently.
No, unfortunately not. I think it's too chaotic there on right now because of the war. But I went before they destroyed the Ark.
Me
the
too.
gate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still have footage in one of those mini Sony cameras
Yeah.
of Palmyra the way it was. One
It's
day I'm going to
amazing.
put this on the net. It's fantastic. And
Please
Aleppo,
do.
which was the
Yeah.
most beautiful souk in West Asia, was in Aleppo. Before it was destroyed by ISIS.
It was burned.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's so sad, but they're
so
rebuilding
sad.
and
They're
there's a lot of
rebuilding.
good stuff.
But did you see that the citadel was hit in Aleppo by the earthquake?
Exactly. Yeah, I was saying this yesterday. They got the war, tried rebuilding, and then now the earthquake on top of it.
And
it's
now
really
the
sad.
earthquake on top. It's so sad. The citadel
And no
is one
aid.
of the...
The Europeans give no aid. They send it to Turkey, which is fine, but not Syria.
So far, the Europeans gave zero to Syria. This is beyond outrageous.
Yeah.
Many of us are talking about it, but of course, falls into deaf ears in Europe. No?
And I saw something in the Washington Post that it was an opinion piece that we should not lift sanctions on Syria, even despite the earthquake.
I saw that as well. It was on Twitter everywhere.
It's
today.
sick, really
sick. Well, but once again, what can we expect of these people who are posing as the leadership in the collective West? Huh?
Yeah,
it's a bunch of bums and psychos. And we have to deal with them for what they are. We have to treat them as bums and psychos.
Pepe, keep doing what you're doing. Thank you so much. And I'm just putting up your Twitter quickly on the screen so people can follow
Richard.
you.
Thank you, everybody.
This is Pepe's handle.
Because now it's back.
Yeah, finally. Jesus, they're banning people left and right. I'm glad to see you again, and Scott again. It's very good. So
thanks very much, Richard. Thanks, everybody. And look, as we used to say, and we still say in Latin America, la luta continua.
The fight continues.
The fight continues.
Pepe, thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Richard. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Everybody, that was Pepe Escobar. Again, a long time, foreign correspondent. He's been doing this for 4 decades, as he said. And please check out his books also. I'm just going to put them up quickly here. If you look them up on Google, this is the last one, I believe, from 2021. But he's done many, and I would consider him an absolute authority on all matters, BRICS and Global South and international relations. So definitely check out his Twitter. And his work, and like I said, he did a lot of work for the Cradle and Asia Times before, so that's also worth looking up. I see we've got about, how many people is it right now? We've got 1,400 watching. Please make sure you've hit the like button. I don't see everyone hit the like button. We've got, I think, 900 likes, so just click the thumbs up. And if you would like to support the show, if you'd like to support my work, please contribute on YouTube or PayPal, whatever. All the links are below. Just pick whatever is good for you, and if you're able to support, I appreciate that very much. So guys, we'll do another live stream in a day or two, and again, I'll bring you all the latest. And that was really great, refreshing to speak with Pepe, with someone who gets, who's been around the world, who's actually traveled and lived and worked in many countries, and understands international relations. That's refreshing. Right, that's what I'm talking about. Thank you guys very much. Thank you. I'm seeing all these nice comments. Let me just see a second. I might have missed some of your donations. One sec before I leave. You guys sent a bunch of things on PayPal, and let me just read them to you. This one is from Rashid. Thank you very much, Rashid, for the donation. And we've also got one from Vahe, thank you. And there's also we've got several people who signed up on Patreon. This is Pello, so thank you very much, Pello, and thank you to the Talking Wombat. Nice username. We've also got some tips on Rockfin. There's a donation here from Cheryl. Thank you very much, Cheryl, and it's good to see you, Ricky Rants. Glad that you're on the stream, and we've also got some donations on YouTube. So just give me a second. Let me read those to you, because I think they were sent while I was speaking with Pepe. So 1 second. Christ, this Nord Stream stuff is insane. I still can't wrap my brain around it. They blew up a fucking pipeline, man. They blew up a pipeline. I mean, remember, it's 2 pipelines, but regardless, they actually did that, and no one cares. No one says anything. You know, Guardian are silent. New York Times are silent. This is shocking. This is shocking. This is state terrorism. You know, this is one of the biggest national security and international relations stories in a decade or more, and they don't say anything. This is not, you know, we're not talking about small fries here. Anyway, let me read these donations to you. There's one here from 3 for the Road, says, "You rock, Richard." Thank you very much. And Pepe rocks as well. Marvin says, "Balloon threat. We need $20 billion defense bill against balloons." Oh yeah, they'll come up with something. Don't worry, you know. Marvin also says, "No U.S. diplomacy. There are only pirates in suits. The United States is screwed." Yeah, pirates in suits is I think a good description. You know, Pepe called them bums and psychos. It fits. It's the same thing. Hussein says, "Will Lula wake up the EU leaders?" No, I doubt it. I think he'll try. I saw Lula wanted to, you know, engage in Ukraine peace talks, which is great. But will he be able to deal with them? I'm not saying because he's not capable. He's very capable. But I'm just saying because the stubbornness, you know, in Brussels is very, very strong. So I wish him the best of luck. Hussein also says Twitter suspended Bashar Assad's account. I don't think that was his real account. He doesn't have an account on Twitter. Someone made an account, but I saw that it's just, I don't know who was behind it. I don't think it was supposed to be a parody or something, but I don't think it was his account. They probably banned it a long time ago. Hussein says, "Dilma presiding BRICS and Lula presiding Brazil. Get ready for a rock and roll world." Yeah, so I think we talked about that just earlier with Pepe, with and that was one of the questions I had for him, which is Brazil's a founding member and it was under Lula. So how important is it that he's back? Because he's very in support of BRICS, and you know, I think there's a consensus among all of the BRICS members that, okay, this is a project that should be expanded. So it's good news. It's good news. Thank you also to Basil for the generous donation. You're very kind, and I'm just checking if we have anything else. There's one more on PayPal. This is from Romano. Thank you, Romano, for the PayPal, and I'll play a crab dance on the way out for you guys who sign up on Patreon. So thanks again, and I'll see you guys in the next days. Okay? Remember to like the video and share it. And if you're new, subscribe. You'll find that this is one of the most important channels for international relations. And I'll just echo Pepe's statement in you know, reporting on that and covering that, because 88% of the planet, you know, they're outside the West. With everything that's happening, that also matters. BRICS matters. So it's not just, you know, let's focus on the West and the US and the UK. They're not the ones on the rise. They're on the decline. There's another world being built right now. All right. Thank you guys very much. Take care. Masalame. Bye-bye. And I'll see you guys in a day or two for the next stream. Just to make sure that you get a notification, hit the bell thing, the bell notification. And there's also an email list if you'd like to get an email notification when I go live. All right. I'll see you guys in the next days. Take care. Bye-bye. Sweden wanted to join NATO. They broke with their decades-long neutral stance. Turkey was one of the only countries, I think, along with Hungary, that was saying, we're not going to let you in, because you need to have consensus, right? You need all the members in NATO to say, okay, you can join. Their bid has kind of been in limbo because Turkey wanted to, extract several concessions. It was very clear that they really want to join NATO in Sweden, and they were doing everything they could to appease the Turks. And then this moron comes in front of the Turkish embassy and burns the Quran. I understand that in their point of view, this is freedom of expression, and you're in Sweden, you can do whatever you like. But you have to remember that if you're trying to get Turkey's support, maybe wait until after you've gotten it. I mean, this is just dumb from a diplomatic level. They're doing everything to appease Turkey, and then because of of one idiot, they let this go to waste. The Germans and the Americans have decided that it would be a good idea to send Ukraine tanks. You know, German tanks against the Russian. Man, I'm perplexed by this. You know, what do they think is going to happen? Because even if you can train the Ukrainian crews who are used to Soviet tanks to operate British tanks, and then you got to train them to operate German tanks, and then you got to train them to operate American tanks, and that's if they can even maintain the logistical supply line to work with these tanks, to keep them running. What kind of door are you opening now for the Russians to do? I mean, this is very clearly escalation. While Germany and the US are saying, yeah, we're going to give Ukraine tanks, the doomsday clock has been moved to 90 seconds to midnight. So this is basically, it's a measurement of how close we are to the end of the world, to the apocalypse, to annihilating the planet with nuclear weapons, right? And this is the closest it's ever been to midnight, okay? Midnight representing the end. Ukraine's most senior military commander has said that his forces need about 300 Western tanks. Over the last year, NATO allies in Eastern Europe supplied Ukraine with Soviet-era and Russian-made tanks that have been ground down or destroyed in constant fighting. Soviet-era and Russian-made tanks. Now, Ukraine, having been a Soviet satellite state and part of the Soviet Union, it was part of Russia, you know, all of its military personnel being trained on Russian tanks. What do you think they're going to do with American tanks or German tanks, which they are not trained to operate? The Ukrainians know how to operate Russian tanks. That's all they know how to operate. The Ukrainians only use Soviet stuff, right? Until the last couple of years and until now. You know, this is the first major influx of NATO weapons. And again, NATO has been training Ukrainian forces, but Challenger tanks, this is brand new. If they can't even use the tanks that they're trained to use, what makes you so confident they're going to know how to use a Leopard 2 or an M1A2 or a Challenger 2? Man, people train on those things for fucking months and years. Both of these home secretaries, okay, Suella Braverman and Priti Patel, both their parents came to the United Kingdom, and under their own laws as home secretary, they themselves would not have been able to come to the UK, to be born in the UK, and to have a life there. So, like, the hypocrisy is so disgusting, you know, like, I got what I wanted, I'm okay, I'm secure, I can live in the UK, I'm the home secretary now I'm gonna shut the gates. Now I'm going to screw people that have literally nothing, that are so desperate they're, you know, risking drowning in the Channel or the Mediterranean Sea. People have to resort to risking drowning. They have to resort to, you know, hiding in trucks or swimming across the Channel, if everyone's ever done that, you know, crossing the Channel because of her policies, because she forces people into doing that, right? So you literally have no choice. You have to be in the UK to begin the application. What are people supposed to do? Just teleport, you know, for 5 minutes, write down the form and just get out of the UK? This is ridiculous. She's a liar, just like the one, you know, her predecessor, Priti Patel. Why is Germany reluctant to give the Ukrainians tanks? That's a really tough one. I wonder why. Germany has long refused to send its most potent weapons to countries in conflict, a byproduct of its legacy of starting World War II and World War I. That's horse manure, because Germany does send weapons to countries in war. You know, Saudi Arabia is one of them. So to get around this, the trick that they use is they don't sell the tanks and you know, the ordnance directly to Saudi Arabia. They move it to Italy, and then from Italy they sell it to the Saudis. So they basically just insert a middleman, and that's how they get around this very, you know, honorable principle of theirs, which they never abide by. You know, if you go and you look up the Yemen war, I mean, you're going to see weapons from fucking everywhere. You know, the Canadians have been selling weapons and making money, Britain, the US, Australia, everyone. And the Germans are no exception. So I mean, the idea is true, but they fucking send weapons. They goddamn do. They do. Do you see how they move like snakes? Do you see how they move like snakes? They get the media to whisper in your ear, oh, don't go on strike. No, don't strike. It'll cripple the economy. Oh. No, it's not, you know, like giving the army 800 billion to fucking bomb, you know, 20 countries. That's okay. That money, we can spare that. But if you go on strike where, oh my God, we're going to lose like 2 billion a day, well, we can't afford that. You know the Pentagon has been audited, I think 5 times now, and every single audit was failed. That means they don't know where the money's going. The Pentagon is like a black fucking hole that sucks trillions of dollars, and the government doesn't even know where the money's going. I can tell you where it's going. You don't need to audit the Pentagon. I can tell you me. Richard Medhurst. That money is going towards drug deals, towards arms sales, towards arms purchases, towards CIA fucking budgets and embassy coffee. That's where that shit is going, man. That shit is going to the spooks. That shit's going to the bombers. That shit's going to the paramilitaries. That's where it's going. You don't need to scratch your head. That's where it's going. And apparently that's an acceptable loss. That's an acceptable use of American dollars and taxpayer dollars. But, you know, going on strike, oh, that's too much of an inconvenience. That's the fucking point, man.
Clap for that, you stupid bastard.
And Corn Pop was a bad dude. And he ran a bunch of bad boys.
Listen, fuckhead, you have fucking crossed the line. Claiming I'm the enemy. You got that, you goddamn son of a bitch?
I don't give a fuck what you think, bitch.
Good morning. Sunday morning.
Cut that bitch out.
Thank you for Iron Dome, which is a technical marvel.
والله انتوا كلاب بصراحه يعني ماشي نشتغل عادي.
We lied, we cheated, we stole.
China.
And you ain't black.
There's always the macro and then there's the micro.
Do not come. Do not come.
I'm gonna come.
You talking to me?
Ladies and gentlemen,
I'll have 2 number 9s. Number 9 large.
we got him.
I told myself, I know it's not.
I've fallen and I can't get up. Disgusting!
Why you texting? Why? You're getting nervous, man. Calm down. It's okay. Okay.
Suck my dick and choke on it. I yield my time. Fuck you.